Welcome, Virgo, to your in-depth monthly horoscope for February 2024 for the Sun or the Ascendant. Now, I'm going to give you a brief outline of what to expect, but please stay with me. I will explore in much greater depth all the ins and outs, particularly relevant to your sign. Your ruler is Mercury, and Mercury is going to be rattling its way through 3 zodiac signs this month. So that's really exciting in itself, but it's also on the 5th going to be linking up to the potent energies of Pluto. So that's very impactful. But also from the 23rd, it moves on from Aquarius into the sign of Pisces, your opposite sign. You also have a full moon in your sign on the 24th, and on the other side of the heavens is the rather steely energies of Saturn, and that's going to link up with the Sun, but also with Mercury, your ruler, as this month comes to a close. So I can't wait to share all of that with you, and so much more. So Virgo, it's a very bubbly start to this month. Your ruler Mercury, Venus, the planet of relating, and Mars, the planet of passion, are all in your 5th house. The 5th house can be about romance. It certainly can be about enjoying ourselves. But most of all, I feel it's about expressing the best of our personality. So it's about our passion, our enthusiasm. It's about doing the things we really enjoy. Also, you do have the Sun and the newly arrived Pluto in the more practical 6th house. And that's where your ruler Mercury moves to on the 5th. But also on the 5th, the Sun in Aquarius is forging a link in a constructive way to Chiron, very much to do with health, healing, self-worth. Now, for you, that represents the 8th house. And because the Sun is in your 6th house, this would be a good time on the 5th to think about the way in which you use your practicality and organisation. But do you really let it feed into your sense of value when it comes to your connections to others? And that's the question that that particular influence can raise. But also on the 5th, as I mentioned before, Mercury arrives in Aquarius but connects to Pluto. If you need to analyse something that I feel that you're not lacking in, but if you need to analyse something with precision but also passion, that's an awesome combination. Now, one of the things that I feel this month is going to ask you to really consider very carefully is, are you enjoying the everyday structures in your life as much as you could? Because you are someone who does like things to be rather metronomic, that's a very positive thing, because it means that the energy flows and is freely flowing. But we also need passion to go with the organisation. And whilst you can get a lot of pleasure out of helping other people, being of assistance, making sure that your nutrition and your physical exercise are right, I think what Pluto is going to do is bring a real new dimension to this area. And if you have been feeling a little bit dissatisfied with your work, not very appreciated, not enjoying a role that you've held for quite some time, some big transformations can start to shape up for you, not least on the 9th of this month. The new moon in your 6th house is a great time to revisit those New Year's resolutions, if you made them, but particularly around exercise and diet. But it is in a square with Uranus. So therefore, the 6th, 9th house energy that's espoused could see you conflicted a little bit. Part of you may want to continue to be dutiful and aware of your obligations and commitments, but another part of you, through Uranus, wants you to be free, be more experimental and more adventurous in your approach. So the key here to gauge exactly where you're up to over the following month of the new moon is, do you feel engaged? Do you feel stimulated by your work or everyday life role? If the answer is no, the arrival of Mars on the 13th into the sign of Aquarius, joining with Pluto, And of course that aligns with with Valentine's Day on the 14th. Mars is very much about desire, but the 6th house is going to give you a big boost of physical vitality. So if you have felt that some of those things that you thought you were going to do or have set a target to do haven't quite got going, Mars aligning with Pluto gives you an awesome amount of willpower. But it also can see you become much more conscious of where you give. And the arrival on the 16th of Venus in the same area also flags up where you're ready to share your time and energy to support others. But is it a fair exchange? Because Pluto aligning to Venus, whether it's around money, whether it's around affection, whether it's around your attitude to food, which Venus also rules, or your own self-value, the combination between Venus and Pluto brings a much greater political dimension to how you give and receive in any kind of relationship, not just a personal one. The 16th to the 19th also sees Mercury in a very tense right angle to Uranus. This really repeats the conflict that occurred on that new moon. If you're doing something that you feel very rewarded by, I don't feel the energy of Uranus is going to cause so much tension. But if you are feeling that it's too much give, not enough get, you feel penned in some way restricted, and it's more difficult to express yourself, once again you're being asked to think very carefully. Are you in the right role, or is your life organisation working as it might? If you are a single person but would like to meet someone, the fact that Venus and Mars align in a conjunction in the second half of this month could be very good. You could get to know someone in a very practical or mundane situation. Yes, it could be that fitness suite, that supermarket queue, on the platform for the train, or it could be through your work. In an existing relationship, particularly with Valentine's Day, the fact that you can be thoughtful about those practical things can be something that the other person should really appreciate about you. But do they? If they don't, Pluto's asking you to flag up that there needs to be a fairer exchange of chores and tasks in terms of the domestic load. But the 19th does see the Sun move into your opposite sign, where of course Saturn is, and Neptune. This 7th house is very much where we connect to others. So interesting coming so soon after Valentine's Day, because this is very much about relationships. The 23rd sees Mercury speed up to connect with the Sun and also with the waiting Saturn and Neptune. But the key on that full moon of the 24th in your sign, it's all about relationships, whether it is with a line manager, whether it's with a colleague, a neighbour, a sibling, someone else that you spend time with. What you're wanting is a fair exchange, that tipping point between what you give and get. It's not necessarily the case you have to get exactly back what someone gives to you, but you have to feel they really respect you. But if there is a weakness in a relationship, Virgo, unfortunately I feel at the end of this month it could be flagged up in quite a significant way. And the reason is, for the last week with the Sun and the last 3 days with Mercury, your ruler, Saturn is applying to them. Saturn has a reputation of being rather difficult, limiting, cold, and certainly it's going to see you thinking in a more detached and perhaps rational way, bringing a little bit less emotion into the equation, particularly if you feel that your tendency to be very obliging, to keep things together, is not really being heard. It's not being recognised and it's not being acknowledged. So whether you need to step forward on that 7th house cusp and really demonstrate your seriousness and say, look, this is what I will or will not accept, that can be one way it works. Also, it could be that you can find yourself being more combative. You're wanting to get stuck in. That could be in some kind of direct sporting way. especially a dueling type sport like squash or tennis or badminton, perfect for the seventh house. But equally, you just may want to test yourself out in the world of work. And if a job hasn't really worked for you, you could find yourself having an important interview towards the end of this week. And maybe the Saturn energy you're going to experience is the cool, scrutinizing gauge, the person who may end up being your boss, because Saturn can be very much linked to that. But it's vital that it does work for you too. It's not just about the money. It works for you to be able to express yourself, and it's an environment that you're going to feel comfortable in. Because let's go back to the start of this month. Your need to express your individuality, your creativity and flair is really what drives you into this month. You get into some key issues that need discussion at the heart of the month, and at the end of the month, then it's how you're linking to others.